How's it going? Dave from Comic Book Investments. So I just finished watching Loki. So this is kind of like my series review on it. Spoilers ahead. So just letting you know, it's going to be spoilers. So I watched the first episode when it first came out, and I wasn't that interested in it. I was like, eh. And so I kind of like forgot about it. And then my girlfriend and I were looking for something to watch, and then she saw Loki. She's like, well, what about Loki? And at this point, pretty much almost all but the last episode was released. And I was like, I don't want to watch episode one again. I was like, I didn't really like it. And she's like, that's fine. We just watch episode two. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I watched episode two and I got more into it. And so did she. And so then we ended up binging all the way up until the last episode, which hadn't been released. And I feel like that has like, when shows come out like a week at a time, if they're not that grabbing the very first episode, then you kind of just forget about it because you have to wait. As opposed to if you get to binge it, then you're like, well, fine, I have nothing else to do. I'll give episode two a chance. So you give episode two a chance and maybe get more involved and stuff like that into the characters. But yeah, so we watched it. It got much, much better. The characters were better. I ended up starting liking it more and more. Then then it gets to the final episode, and it was interesting because the whole episode revolves around them in pretty much a room explaining everything. And at first, I heard rumors that Kang the Conqueror was going to show up, and they show this guy, and I'm like, this guy's like a goofy, wacky, kind of unhinged guy. And I'm like, please don't be Kang. Please don't be Kang. And he alludes to him being Kang. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, they totally ruined the character. Like, this guy's dumb. Like he's spewing out information. And it was like he's trying to be funny and weird and wacky, but he really wasn't. And I don't know. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is who they're going to go with for like the big overarching villain, kind of like Thanos, but Kang. And I'm like, ugh, this guy's kind of like annoying. and it's nothing like Kang in the comics. But then he goes on to explain that he is Kang, but he's just one of infinite amount of Kangs. And that what happened was he figured out how to like manipulate time, but all the other Kangs found out how to do that. And while he is good and a bunch of Kangs are good, there's actually a bunch of ones that are evil and want to conquer everything. And so the good ones ended up having to fight the bad ones, and then the good one won. And so there's only one Kang left, basically, and he controls the time and makes sure that everything goes according to plan. So there is, there's nothing bad can happen. The Kang can't come and conquer. And they go into like the multiverse and everything like that, which is pretty cool. I like that stuff. So I was like, okay, this guy's not like, he's kind of annoying, but he's only one iteration. And they already have like multiple Lokis that you meet throughout the show. So you get to meet like the old school Loki that you see from like old Journey mystery comics, and like just a bunch of different Lokis. And each one is a little bit different and a little bit different personality, but they all have similar traits. So I was like, okay, this Kang is being portrayed as very annoying, right? And it's kind of like, I don't know, weird. I'm like, I don't want him to be the villain. He's not. I like my villains menacing, and for some reason, a lot of times they can't do that in movies. They can't make him menacing enough in a good way. Like Joker's menacing, Thanos is menacing. Like they don't have to be like a certain personality. They just have to be menacing. Darth Vader's menacing. So this guy wasn't menacing at all. He was just more, I would say, akin to Jim Carrey's Riddler, right? And it's like, that's not menacing. You don't feel threatened like something actually bad's going to happen by him. So then what ends up happening, he says, look, you have two options. You can either take over controlling the timeline, which Loki kind of wanted to do, or you could kill me, which they came to do, and what would end up happening is this thing would start all over. The bad Kangs would come over and rule, and eventually a good Kang would come along and destroy that bad Kang, and then we'd be right back where we are again. And so one thing that really bugged me, and they do this a lot, is they can't seem to make their villains just villains. I'm talking about Disney. It's like, just keep them villains, right? Just like Maleficent, right? And Sleeping Beauty, they had to make a movie about how she's misunderstood and she actually did everything for love. And it's like, she's a villain. Just make her a villain. There's people out there that do bad things just because. Like, and they're bad people. Don't try to justify everything. So, Loki's like, he does everything for himself. He just wants to rule and all. And he starts up that way. And then at the end, the reason why he changes, right? And he's like, look, I don't want to rule the timeline. I just want to be with you, is a girl Loki, who is a variant, right? From a different multiverse. And so it ends up all being about love. And it's like, look, I'm changed because I've never met someone like you, which he's technically meeting himself. But the girl version. And it's just like, and then they kiss. And then the girl version's like, yeah, but I'm not you, and pushes him through a time portal to a different timeline, and then goes and kills Kang, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm like, why? Why does it always have to be about love? Why can't it just, there's always like this overarching love thing. It's like, I get it. Some people, that's important to them, but it's like, why is like they have to change because of a girl or a guy? Like, why can't they, if they do change because they've seen something different? Or it's like, or they don't change at all. How about they're just, bad, evil, So yeah, so that part I thought was super annoying. But then he gets pushed to another timeline where, since the girl Loki killed Kang, now the evil Kang has taken over. So when he goes to his other timeline, right, the Loki that we know, Tom Hiddleston, he gets there, and everyone he's met throughout the whole season in the TVA, which is like this time organization, doesn't even know who he is anymore, because the time, so many branches have been messed up. They don't know who he is anymore, and Kang the Conqueror has a massive statue overlooking everyone, as in that he conquered everyone. And so I think what they're going to do is Kang is going to be the overarching villain for the Avengers to fight and all that kind of stuff. And I know Kevin Feige has said something like, I don't want it to take like 10 years to finally get to battle, like so they did with Thanos. So I think it's going to be much quicker. So it'll probably be like 1 or 2 Avengers movies instead of 4. So maybe like 5 or 6 years. But overall, I like the show. I'd recommend watching it. They're making a season 2. So, I mean, the last episode literally ended on a cliffhanger and nothing really got resolved. It feels like it's just like, oh, tomorrow's episode will be... So it didn't really feel like an ending. But let me know what you thought if you watched it. All right, thanks.